Okay, so today we're going to talk about picking batting. There's a lot on the market. Let's start in a little binder, Leah.
Sure.
So we have this little folder. There is so many different battings. Oh no, let's see. Yeah, let's do that. There's no glare. So Dream Green, we don't stock it, but we can get it. It's, as you can see, soft polyester, fiber, recycled plastic bottle. And I have to tell you, it's soft as all get out. You wouldn't think that. Dream Puff, it's the thick, squishy, puffy white one.
Well, we could pull some of these out.
Nah,
No.
they're not going to be important to our today, but just I want people to understand there's so many more choices. These are all Dream Quilter's Dream Batting Company, and I love them for lots of different reasons. We can talk about it today. Hi, Gail. So Quilter's Dream Cotton, 100% cotton. This is important. Pre-washing, no scrim, resin, or binder. What does that mean? We've had people take these home, throw them in the wash machine, wash them, and have them shred into balls, and then for some reason think that I should replace it for free. Sorry, I'm just sliding in a shop owner's wine. Okay, so no scrim. Scrim's a mesh, kind of like a microscopic onion bag. So, and what some companies do then is they take the cotton fiber and smush it into that net, and that's what holds it together. But we're going to give you some ideas of what is actually available. Now, resin. So resin, seriously, it's a chemical, and binder sometimes is a glue. So resin and binder are similar in that they're kind of a glue product. So basically they take all of these fibers, they'll say no scrim, but what else are they using to hold it together? It could be one of these two things, and because the content is well below a certain number, they don't actually have to declare. So not declaring resin or binder can be a problem. They can be a problem for someone who has big allergies and needs something 100% cotton, which this is. There's nothing else. What they've done is they felted this cotton. This is a remnant, and you can see the needling marks a bit. Yeah, it does show up a bit. But this is super soft. And the ones with scrim, sometimes when you're quilting, that scrim pushes from the front of the quilt to the back of the quilt, and you see little white heads. It looks like your quilt has a bad case of acne on the back. The needle's hitting the scrim, which is super strong, and it pushes through. Difference in batting is massive. The Quilter's Dream Blend, that one's cotton and poly. So we'll give you the cover there a little bit. So for those people who like a little bit of a blend, but this one does not have any extra loft. They're the same thickness as the plain cottons, where in some brands you get a little bit of loft. We carry Hobbs poly cotton, so sometimes they look a bit lumpier. They're not quite as smooth, and some people are used to that. And hand quilters quite like loft and Hobbs. It's easy to needle. They call it easy to needle, but so is all the Dream products. If you're a hand quilter, the Dream products are also for you. So here's one. It's 100% polyester. The Dream Wool. So wool, if you like light and fluffy quilts, that's the one I'll pull out because it's the most different. So see it's quite a bit thicker than its friends of the cotton. There's 2 layers here. So you can see how thick that is compared to these. Thick, thick, thick. Puffy wool. It's a blend of different wool. And here's the details, right? Scoured, washed, machine washable and dryable. That's important. Some wool batting out there in the world is dry clean only. Surprise!
That would be an unhappy surprise in a quilt that you give as a gift.
Yeah. It's like those cartoons where you accidentally wash the sweater, the wool sweater, and now it fits the dog.
Yeah.
Or the cat. So this stuff is important stuff. And then we're going to talk a lot about this stitch up to 8 inches apart. Again, no scrim or resin. Light and luxurious. It's warm, but it's light. So if you have someone who doesn't like heavy blankets, but again, you can hand or machine quilt this. And some battings you can't actually hand quilt. They're too, the scrim, people don't like the scrim because when you're going in and out with the needle, it's very difficult to quilt those by hand. So all of this little bits of information is very important, and a lot of people don't spend any time checking it out. Dream Orient, it's a blend of bamboo, silk, tencel, and cotton. Tencel is like a poly, give or take, more or less. This one is super soft, and again, things like 8 inches apart. It's got the silk in it, gives it and the bamboo give it that more drape, and machine wash and dry. No pre-washing, minimal shrinkage, no resin, no scrim, no binder. And needling, they talk about, right, the needle gliding, it's called needling.
Oh, there's a user's guide.
Yeah, well, you can download this from the Quilter's Dream website as well. But yeah, it gives you contents and comparisons and, you know, how it's made and all of that. The cotton comes in 4 weights, I think. So here's the prepackaged sizes. Craft, crib, throw, twin, double, queen, super queen, and king. And also this batting comes in natural and white. White, it takes more processing, so it costs a little more. However, I'm telling you, like, so there's white paper and there's the cream batting. So when you see that, you can see you may not need to pay for white. Okay, so this is white poly, and so I call that an optic white. It's super bright white. And then next to super bright white, the white cotton doesn't look so white. But this is like that blue white, glows in the dark. And then if you bring in the natural, so you can see the 3 colors essentially. So there's times under white things that you might want optic white, and that's a poly. And you might want this white.
I have that piece of white there.
And we brought in a piece of white fabric. Let's put it here. Sometimes you can see, it really doesn't, this one doesn't really, you don't see the difference in color. So when you put white on cream, sometimes it dulls it down. But see how there's such a slim difference. It looks more stark on screen than it is in person. But when you put white fabric on it, you see this is just a shade whiter. So there's just a mild difference. This is brighter and softer on the cream. If that's of no importance to you, do not pay for white. It's that simple. Oh yeah, wall hangings. You want a sturdy batting if you're going to hang it on the wall. If it spends its life being, you know, hung by its head, if it's not well done, it could grow. And not every batting is good for every project. How much do you want to quilt that quilt? It's not a quilt, it's a wall hanging. When you're buying your batting, this one, stitching maybe up to 8 inches apart. That's really important. That's the space you can leave between stitching. We do PatchAbilities wall hangings, and they're like 6 by 12 inches, 6 by 20 inches. You don't need to quilt them at all, really, if you tack them a little bit. Yeah, if you want the white to stay bright and crisp, you can put a white batting in it. At that point, it's worth paying for it, but it isn't always worth paying for. Again, on here has all of the other info. Shrinkage, minimal 1 to 3%. The average human in a large piece of fabric or like this batting, you'll never see that shrinkage. The brand new quilter's cotton that we sell is also 1 to 3% shrinkage. So it might have a gentle, soft rumple, but it won't have that old-fashioned, I've been washed a million times rumple, because that batting was shrinkier. So was the fabric. So carded. So any of you who've ever played with wool, carded, cross-lap, needle punch. That's what they do with wool roving to make wool felt. So what we have, in fact, here is felted cotton. So there's nothing in here which keeps this nice and soft. Those are quilty ones. Now wall hanging ones, let's talk about a couple. We have two, a few. This one, look, if you fuse it, Dream Fusion, fusible dream cotton batting. So it's that same batting you just saw, but inside there's it's a little rough, it's the glue. So you can iron it in and still quilt it. So that eliminates basting, at least on the one side. And that sometimes for a lot of people really helps. Tied quilts, and you can put any of this batting in any of those other craft projects, but fusing it in helps. And it comes in the cream, and then it comes in white, bright white poly. And poly's a lot less expensive, you guys. Yeah, go ahead with that one, thanks, Leah. We also have packs of Dream Poly. And like this says, you won't believe it's a polyester. No, it feels like cotton, and it's soft and drapey. You don't want a wall hanging too soft. It will hang funny. It could stretch funny. So again, this one, look, the poly holds together up to 12 inch. And this is made the same way. Machine wash and dry, low or no shrinkage, so that's under 1%, and doesn't wrinkle, crease, or keep fold. Cotton does. Poly's a little springier. It bounces about.
So for your seasonal stuff,
a
poly might be a better option because it'll come out of your closet hanging nicer. Like for seasonal stuff, like your Christmas wall hangings.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's gonna have less.
Less memory from being in the closet for 9 months of the year.
Good point, Leah. Available in colors white or black. We brought a black for you. This is a different size. And look, there's 3 weights here. This is really important, you guys. The request weight is thin and filmy. It's the weight I would use if I was making a quilted jacket. Select weight, that's kind of traditional weight that most quilters are used to and use. And deluxe is quite a bit heavier, and it'd be the same typically if people took a couple battings and laid them together, and people do that especially if they like weight. And so if you like weight, deluxe, people are used to laying 2 battings together, and laying 2 battings together pretty much is the same price as buying one single heavy one, because you're getting twice the batting, if that makes sense. So this is kind of the traditional thickness. and it's pretty good. So, but wall hangings, let's go back. If you glue them in, you don't have to do so much quilting. And if you want to try a fusible cotton or a fusible poly in your wall hanging, I highly recommend it. It's much easier to quilt it if you're going to quilt it once it's fused in. You don't have to really spray it, you don't really have to pin it, you just iron it on and go. And in the smaller PatchAbilities projects, you don't even need to quilt it, really. Remember I showed you this quilt in yesterday's video. This one was done stitch as you go. So you would take this batting, iron it to the backing, or iron the backing to the batting, however you want to go with that. And then you would stitch and flip these pieces here. So that much easier for quilting. And when you're done, you're done. It's already quilted. It's ready to go.
Is it better to fuse to the front or to the back?
Well, most of us work from the front, so if there's any wiggling or shifting, you can deal with it. I would iron to the backing. For most people, dealing with the big, if you're doing a big quilt, big backing, big piece of batting, it can be all a little much. And if you're ironing, iron like you would quilt from the middle out to make sure you're moving any air bubbles out as if you were putting down wallpaper or Mac tack. And then work from the front, and then you'll see if anything's in. And you sometimes, even though there's not glue on both sides, sometimes if you have the backing and the batting ironed together, fused together, then you can iron the top on if it's not too big, and it tends to grab and then it doesn't shift too much. You can put a few pins in, or you can do a little 505 spray, or one of the ODIF sprays is a fusible spray. You can spray the back of your quilt top, let it dry, and then it becomes an iron-on quilt top. Or you can spray the batting and iron the top to it. 6 in one, half a dozen the other, whichever works out better for you. But there's so many cool little tools to help you these days. It's definitely worth doing a little research or sticking with our videos. Once you quilt your quilt here, remember we talked a little bit yesterday that by appliquing through, I've quilted this. Let's have a look let's sneak peek at the back. So on this fun one, the quilting is the applique, and on a wall hanging, that's probably great.
That would definitely be enough to hold it together in place through the batting.
Because this thing's only 6 by what, 12?
Yeah.
It really didn't need quilting, but it did need appliquing, so we did both at once. So this one, it's a black background, so maybe a little hard to see. This one was appliqued down with a straight stitch only, which also became the quilting.
Nice.
So it's a wall hanging. It's gonna live, hopefully, a nice sedate life on a wall. This one, I did that one, and I did it a little different. So this one, appliqued through, but you could have done the applique on the backing, and then just what I often do is just quickly run around it in the simplest of terms, just to anchor it so it doesn't sag. Sometimes the weight of applique can make it quilt sag if you don't quilt it. Farm was done all the way through, quilted and appliqued one step.
Yeah. So you don't have to make your life more complicated by quilting and appliquing.
Right? So I didn't bother to clean these up because why? It's going to hang on my wall. But I could have done a little more cleaning on the front. These are all newer ones where we got smarter. Because you know, right? As you know better, you do better. And we figured out we didn't have to do both. Do all the applique and then go back in and layer it and do all the quilting. Just, yeah, like Leah said, you don't need to do double the work. If it bugs you to see all of those stitches on the back, then go back to the other way, applique it, layer it, then quilt it. Read your batting packages, find out what you need to know. How much do you have to quilt it? That stitching may be up to 8 inches apart. That's crucial information, especially in a big quilt, because that you can leave 8-inch spacing before the batting shreds apart during use. So.
And you don't want a lumpy, like Walmart quilt.
Yeah, the old quilts people used to buy on big, lofty, fluffy things, and then they'd wash them, and all the batting would roll to the bottom. They weren't made well, and they weren't made from batting that was meant to be washed like that, and they weren't quilted properly because a lot of those battings say quilting up to 3 inches apart. So, right, you're looking at a square only so big. 3 inches apart, that's as far apart, and you know they weren't quilted like that, and all the batting pulled away.
Yeah.
And then 8 inches is a considerably larger area. Doesn't mean you have to go to 8 inches. It doesn't, but you have to be less than 8 or less, 3 or less. You can't fudge it up because the package told you at which point you would be compromising the structure of the batting. Yeah, well, and so the more quilting there is in a project, the stiffer it gets.
Yeah.
And so it's not soft, it's not fluffy. And so if you want rigidity, you can use a more rigid batting. Wall hanging shouldn't drape. Drape means like the folds of things. Draping, that's, you don't want your wall hanging.
That's what makes your clothes look
drape.
nice.
Yeah, like the ruffles over here. This is draping. You don't want this in your wall hanging. You want things pretty flat, pretty rigid. So some fusible batting would be your friend. There's so many different battings. If it's just going to be in a wall hanging, it's going to live on the wall. Polyester batting costs a lot less as well. Just a point of fact. And
you won't have to worry about like weird texture on somebody's skin or.
Yeah, I mean, a stiffer batting, a more heavy batting, some glue, fusible in there on a wall hanging that might create some stiffness is not a problem on a wall hanging. It's only a problem in a quilt that you want to wrap around yourself that now can't wrap because it's quilted a 1/4 inch at a time, Leah.
Yeah, it's not a cuddly quilt, but I sure love it.
Because this is not for me a bed quilt, but it could be a bed quilt.
The other one's totally going to be a bed quilt.
This one still has softness to it, just given the way it was made.
Yeah, I used Hobbs in that. So
Yeah,
it would be soft.
I found an applique.
You found an applique.
So that had, because this one was done in the hoop, but satin stitching, and then it was just quilted through here. Around. So this was a block. There is, I don't know if they're still making it, but Dream Batting had, I think it was called Angel, and it was meant for children's stuff. You don't want to use synthetics in children's things because if there was a fire, the reason there's so many rules, it's almost all based around fire in my opinion, but when something melts, it causes more severe burns because it melts and sticks to you. So with children's sleepwear and that, you'll see a lot of things they're not rated for fire safety. But yeah, this one.
We don't know if that was.
I'm not sure if this one's still available, and I've never ordered this in for anyone, but it's a specially engineered man-made fiber that's inherently flame retardant. I can tell you, burn tests cotton. Cotton doesn't ignite, that's why cotton nighties are safer. But this one, it looks like and feels like cotton, but isn't.
We should talk about bearding.
Right, so we talked a little bit about tufting, which looks like pimples. That usually is your needle was dull and or you have scrim in the batting and it was hitting the scrim and pushing it through the back. And you got little pimples on the back. That's called tufting. And then the one called bearding, it will be on the top of the quilt and you'll see sort of like a white floaty hair. The problem with that is if you start pulling at it to get rid of it, it's like Kleenex. You're just going to pull all the batting through over time. And that's called bearding. And that's a polyester that is not... Poly. When you look at poly under the microscope, it has claws, like where cotton is flat and soft, and wool is kinky, but not claw-like. That makes sense. Wool looks like my hair. Not claw-like, but kinky. So what happens is the poly claws work their way out, and then they create that bearding. Dream poly, these ones don't. The way that these are made and how they're finished, they don't. Yeah, we were just going to talk batting for wall hangings. And so what we brought out for you was some Dream Poly, black and white, in case it mattered to you. Then we brought our book of batting so you'd understand that there's more than one choice in the world. But then we brought this out so you could see that the sizes available, and then there's 2 colors, and that packaging's important. But okay, for your wall hanging, I would recommend, if you want to go inexpensive, poly. Use a poly bag, the fusible one or the plain one. And then if you, for whatever reason, can't bring yourself to use a poly bat, and there's nothing wrong with them, the fusible does feel a little funny because it's soft on the outside, a little crunchier feeling on the inside where the glue is. But you know, save your money, buy poly for wall hanging. Save time by buying fusible, and don't worry about buying the most expensive beautiful batting. We should go.
We should go. Thank you guys for joining us for PatchAbilities and Applique Week.
Here, say goodbye to my funny little friend.
Bye guys. Have a great weekend.
In their cool little glasses.
Go enjoy some sunshine.
Remember to isolate, enjoy it while it lasts. Take care.
Okay, bye guys.